This story begins by telling us that there was a game where if someone died, they would also die in real life, which made people think that there would be a decline in VR games, but thanks to the development package of games of the same style called The Seed, these games could continue to be produced on a big scale. Among them, there is one that managed to stand out because instead of using swords, it uses firearms. The name of that game is Gale Online, and it is here where we meet our protagonist, a little Len, an adorable girl who is going to where her teammate M is in order to be able to fight. The game starts and both appear in a forest, a place that is not favorable for them, because M is a sniper and Len stands out excessively for her color. After checking the map, they both head to the south to take advantage of the city, but they are interrupted when they hear some gunshots. M tells the protagonist to move slowly to be able to explore and find targets. However, when she reaches a highway, she finds several players hiding in the rubble. Her teammate orders her to not attack, but thanks to the scanner, the other players manage to see her and start shooting at her. Len did not know what to do because of the distance, she could not shoot them, so his friend ordered her to just hide. Meanwhile, the attackers keep firing, but this turns out to be bad for them, as a group of snipers start shooting at them one by one. As a result, they are forced to cease shooting, giving the protagonist a break, who later meets M. He tells her that when the game's scanner occurred, it was revealed that there was another group behind the attackers who had prepared to shoot. Her teammate then begins to explain the unique and coordinated movements that the group of snipers have. Not only that, but they seem to know how to rappel, which makes M think that these players are actually professionals. This bothers Len a lot because playing against professionals is unfair, and if they fight against them, they would lose and would not be able to establish themselves in the center of the map. This is why his teammate asks her if she has good luck, since if so, they could try to flee down the highway and let the other teams fight against the pros. When they check the scanner, they find out that they have a clear path, so they start to run, and again, M sends her to the front. Meanwhile, in the city, the teams fight and kill each other, but in the end, the professionals finish them off easily. Returning to the protagonists, they manage to reach an abandoned house where, upon looking at the scanner, they discover that there are only 8 teams left. Because of this, M suggests that their next move is to wait, since several of the teams are quiet, waiting for the perfect opportunity to attack the others, and the only problem they have are the professionals. However, he comes up with an idea to confront them, and for this he needs Len's size and agility. Meanwhile, the professionals come out of their hideout to search for the protagonist, following the same route she took. A scanner reached 0 and it indicates that she is there, but they were surprised because when they get closer to where she has to be, they do not manage to find her, which makes them start to get worried. However, one of them realizes that she is in the suitcase, and it is at that moment that Len comes out of it, shooting at the soldiers and taking the opportunity to cover himself with their bodies, since when they die, they are indestructible. This makes the leader realize that they have lost, and therefore they decide to end the training and give up. Finally, we return to real life, and we see how some girls are watching the game, and it is there where we discover the true identity of Len. It is a woman named Karen. Here we learn a little of the life of our protagonist, who moved to the city of Tokyo, and since she arrived, she hasn't been able to make friends and neither to work, since her parents have prohibited her to do so. Also, we discover that she is embarrassed because of her big tall, considering herself unattractive. She heard about the incidents that occurred with the VR, and despite the danger was huge at that time, after the seed was found out and several changes were made, more games started to be created, and since this offered a new experience, allowing her to live a whole different life, Karen decides to give it a try. For this reason, she went to Miyu, who is a gamer, and asked her to help her get to know the world of video games. She indicated her what to buy and how to install it. Then she put on the gadget and entered to the first game, putting the name LLEN. The problem was that the avatars were randomly generated, and she was given a very tall character, which made her feel startled, so the device kicked her out of the game. However, she didn't give up, and she started the adventure of trying out different games until she could find a character that she really liked. She made several attempts until finally she arrived at the game Gale Online, and she became the character that we already know. Glad to be cute after all, she was not aware about the game that she had joined, so she had to make the game tutorial. She was welcomed rudely by a woman, and she realized the type of game she was playing. There she learned about the types of weapons available and also how to use them. Although at first she was quite bad at shooting, with time she understood how they worked and learned to control her pulse to be able to aim better. That's when she began her gaming experience, and she was not only spending her time in the city, she was also fighting against monsters, obtaining a lot of experience over the time. However, despite her avatar was small and cute, her clothes didn't fit perfectly, so she went to the clothes store where she saw that it was possible to change the color of her outfit. So she changed her clothes and weapons to pink, which made people think she looked like a little girl. After that, she goes to the desert to gain more experience, so she prepares a trap. At that moment, a group of players appear, causing her to panic because she has never fought other people before. But surprisingly, they just walk by her side, letting her know that her clothing is perfectly blended with the sand. She takes this advantage along with her trick, her agility and size, finishing off these players very easily. This is how the rumors about her begin, naming her Pink Demon, since she is so small small and nimble that nobody is able to catch her, and because of her clothes, she camouflages very well. She eventually ended up getting caught by a female player that was looking for her, but instead of killing her, she just asks her to go with her for a drink so they can have a talk, and introduces herself as Pitohui. At the place, Pito explains to Len that she has been playing GGO since the beginning because it has a higher level of brutality than other games. Then she asks the protagonist about the same thing, and that is when she sees the huge talent of the protagonist since she had only begun to play the same game 3 months ago. She finally asks her to become friends on the game, and so they both begin to hunt together. This is also the way Len acquires her beloved P-chan. However, even though she is her friend, she doesn't know very much about Pito, and so she tries asking her about what are her hobbies, but she's still being a mystery, and that's the reason why she offers her that if someday she manages to defeat her, they will meet each other in the real world. Time goes by, and P2 introduces to the protagonist the Squad Jam, which is the event that she was playing in the previous chapter. Pitohui explains that this competition is based on a team battle royale where everyone fights against everyone, and by this way, the best players in all of GGO are chosen. She tells her that she participated once, but she lost after facing a big sniper, and not only that, shortly after, the final players formed a couple, and this made a viewer of that to like the Battle of Teams theme. So he sent a request to the game company asking them to continue doing competitions of the same style, and it was for that the SG were created. It's at this point that Pito suggests to her friend to join the SJ since that day she has a commitment in real life, so she will not be able to participate. At first, the girl doesn't want to, but her friend motivates her by telling her that the problems that she has in the real world can be used to win. Pito tells her that she also has them, so she decided to create troubles in GGO to be able to vent some bit. Since Lynn is still unsure if she will play or not, her friend tells her that if she doesn't decide before the limit time, she'll forcefully write her down. In the real world, Karen tells Miyu about the event and how undecided she is, but her friend reminds her that on the same day is the sale of the tickets for the concert of their favorite singer, and this puts her in a hard situation. However, her friend tells her that if she doesn't get the tickets, she can join the competition. This is how the time passes and the protagonist keeps reading about the event, learning about every rule and strategy. Finally, the day arrives and her friend couldn't get the tickets, so she has no other option but to play. That made Pito very happy when she found out the news. She also tells her that she has a partner for her. Before they meet, she decides to test her about the rules, showing that Len knows a lot about the SJ and also tells her that she will be the team leader. In that, his partner arrives, M, who quickly introduces himself and scares the protagonist a bit because of his appearance, and the situation only gets worse when Pito leaves them alone to get to know each other. While they are alone, M tells her that they shouldn't be nervous about the situation and just try to get along. Realizing that she does not know why they have met, he decides to take her to the training camp, where he starts to test her to see what she is capable of. It is there they got an idea of her way of fighting, so he explains why she will be the leader, but she only remains thoughtful about what he has in the backpack. After that, Karen writes a letter to the singer Kanzaki, expressing the peace she feels while she listens to her songs and how she's always been ashamed about his height, but after meeting GGO, she feels so much better, and she hopes to change in the real world. At the end of the letter, she asks her to do her concert in Bigger Avenue, since many people besides her couldn't get tickets. Comes the time before the game and makes sure that everything is ready. Also, he gives to Len a knife, explaining how useful it is in an enclosed space and how she should use it, showing the big knowledge he has. Finally, the squad jam starts, going back to the moment when Len defeated the professionals, where she shocked all the spectators, but more than anything, herself, to see that the others had given up. After that, she went with M, where they go to check the map and realize that there are only 2 teams left to defeat, but to not waste the time just to go for one of them, they decide to go to the closest one, which is in the lake. However, as soon as they reach the place, they began to shoot at them, since their rivals got a boat. This is why Len and M are forced to be on the defensive, because they can't escape by land. The vehicle could also follow them in there. For this reason, M takes his gadget out of his backpack, revealing that it is a protective shell from bullets. Using this, the shots from her rivals fail to hit him, since it is one of the strongest protections in the entire game, being illegally sold for a lot of money. Once he finishes explaining to Len about this, he tells her about a new strategy, which is that while he stays in that place, she just runs and dodges enemy shots. So it is in that way that he starts shooting at the rivals, finishing one by one until only one unit remains, and it is then that he throws a grenade at them, blowing up the boat, leaving the rest to the leader. After finishing him, she stayed confused because there were no shot lines in M, so he told her that he didn't use the system, and that is why it did not appear. It is there that the girl remembers the words of her friend, where she told her the difference between the guns in the game and real life. And it is that it has support, therefore it is not very faithful to reality, and because of that, the players do not feel as if it were a real weapon. Also, support is a double-edged sword. On one side, when playing with that system, the person ends up rusting and losing his ability. But on the other side, this one allows you to shoot from a distance in an easier way. Along with this, Len realizes that the trick M used is that he put his finger on the trigger just when he was going to to shoot instead of keeping it there, since that activates the system, and that is why the shot lines did not appear. Again, it is time for the scanner, and as soon as they see it, they realize that the rival team is very close to them. It's then that the protagonist gets shot, and M is forced to take her out of there, also getting shot while they are escaping. Once they are out of danger, Len begins to heal herself while M explains how they got so close, also remembering how lucky she is, because that shot could have been fatal. Then both think of a last strategy where they will go to a wasteland so they can have a better defense. Once they arrive, M takes out a letter to read it while his partner covers it. But at that moment, her partner calls her, and when she turns around, she realizes that he's pointing a gun at her, and finally a shot is heard. Thanks to Len's ability, she was able to prevent his own death and be able to use the pistol's safety to get his partner defenseless. Then she points at him and asks why he did that, but M breaks down and shows how cowardly he is, begging her to not kill him. She asks again about the reason for all of that, and he tells her that if he dies, then Pito will do the same thing in the real world. Obviously, the girl doesn't believe that, but when she reads the letter that her friend gave him, she realizes that she requests him to make the game interesting, but she doesn't care because keeps thinking that it's just a death in the game. However, M knows that Pito is crazy, and she's a lover of deadly games, and that's why he is so afraid of her. Since he betrayed and feeling the fear of his partner, she lets him go, going out alone to look for the last enemies, meeting one in the middle of her way, so this begins a small confrontation where both get injured. However, it makes use of its great agility to easily kill the enemy. But at that moment, the other players appear, forcing her to escape. As she leaves, one of the girls approaches her partner, upset by her death and determined to kill Len. The protagonist is hiding behind a rock when she starts to hear shots. It's there that she remembers the advice that Pito gave her about not shooting without meaning, since it reveals her fear to the enemy, so the best is to remain calm. This is why she goes to them, but it was a trap, so she ends up getting shot again, being forced to run and hide in another place. While she is there, they start to shoot at her with a large machine gun, but she uses the explosion of a grenade as a shield to run away, making everyone recognize her strength. After that, she realizes that as running away, she sees that it is useless, so begins to analyze how she was playing before this, realizing that she has always been close to her enemies. This is why she decides to stop running, and it is at that moment that P-chan promises that they will both win together. It is like this that she goes towards her enemies, finding the boss and the others. Once they see her, they start shooting at her, but she easily avoids everything and then starts to fight with everyone, taking advantage of her size and agility and finishing one by one. However, the boss turns out to be a very strong rival for her, so she ends up cornering her. Just as they are about to finish her off, M appears, shooting the remaining enemies from a distance away, giving her an opportunity to fight with the boss. While they are closer, she recognizes her strength, revealing that her name is Eva. Since they both run out of bullets, now it's a fight of strength, but the last of her squad throws a clip to Eva, which she uses to start shooting at Len. Fortunately, she uses her weapon as a shell, and from the anger that she gets from seeing her weapon get broken, she takes advantage of it to use her knife, and when all seems lost, the protagonist manages to defeat Eva. There is still another girl from that squad who faces M, but he defeats her with a shot to the head. And with that concludes the squad jam with the Len and M as winners. A time after the competition, Len is in the store to buy a weapon, getting one identical to her beloved P-chan. After buying it, she meets Eva again. This is how we go to the real world, where Saki and the rest of her classmates went to the winner's house, giving to understand that after the SJ, they met her in person and became friends. They went to her house just to see the video when she beats the military, leaving them shocked and even more knowing that Len is Karen, and each one goes on to introduce themselves through her avatars. In that, Karen asks them why they started playing the game, so Saki tells her that they started for the rhythmic gymnastics club. Since they need to coordinate, they tried it first with a sports simulator, and then with GGO, since it reinforces their teamwork, and in the end, they became fans. This is why Saki asks her to compete in the next edition of the SJ, but she seems not interested in it. Shortly after, Karen meets with Miyu, who was delighted after seeing how good her friend was in the game, although they are still a little bit frustrated that they couldn't go to Kanzaki's concert. Sometime later, the protagonist receives news about a new SJ that will be held, but in this one, the rules have changed. Also, Saki tells her that her team will participate, and since she wants to face her, she invites her to do it too, but Karen still doesn't want to. Arriving in her house, a strange man calls her, but he quickly reveals to be M, but she doesn't trust him. Finally, she invites him in, where she hears him say that if she doesn't agree to talk to him, someone will die the night of the SJ. Once at her apartment, M tries to convince her that it's him, but he doesn't have something to prove to her that it's him. After all, he introduces himself as Goshi. Now that she knows his name, he asks her for help with his problem. Because if they don't solve it, he and Pito will die in the next SJ. In order to understand this, he goes on to explain why Pito is so crazy. It turns out that her death had always captivated her, making her love deadly games. It's because of it that when the SAO incident happened and she was not in there, she went crazy, having fits of anger and sadness until she was able to calm those feelings. Over time, she became more interested in her work becoming successful, but with the arrival of the GGO and not being able to attend the last SJ, her madness returned, so she took it against M, threatening him with death. For this, he knows that if he doesn't do what she says, they will both die. He doesn't want to go to a therapist or the police since he respects Pito's wishes, and this is because he loves her almost as weirdly and crazy as Pito loves deadly games. When Karen hears that, she finds it weird and she realizes how difficult the situation is. In that, Goshi asks her to participate in the next SJ because if she defeats them both, Pito will not commit suicide or kill them both. Also, if she wanted to do it, she could not since she has a pending promise with the protagonist. So that is why Karen agrees to play and defeat Pito to save her. Karen needs a team, so she asks Miyu for help so she can play since Goshi will play with Pito. Just like that, Miyu joins the game calling herself Fukuraizo, but we will call her Fuka. After she joins, LLEN quickly goes to see the statistics of her partner and discovers that she has abilities such as strength and resistance, but she doesn't have money, so they ask him for something. He agreed and left it in a garbage container. In this way, she gets 10 million credits for the game. They go to a weapons store, but nothing catches Fuka's attention, so they go to the place where the protagonist got her P-chan. Here, they see a large grenade launcher, and even though it is very expensive, Fuka doesn't think twice and buys 2 of them on the spot along with all the ammunition she can. Sometime later, we see her practicing shooting in the desert, but both realize that Fuka can only fight from afar, besides that she is not very good at it. But since both complement each other, there should be no problem. LLEN wants to try a strategy with this, but first they have to sign up. In doing so, the girls from the gymnastics club and the other players find out the news, being excited to know that they will have an opportunity to defeat the pink demon. Meanwhile, they continue to practice, with LLEN determined to defeat Pito. Later, both friends meet to discuss the rules and the problems they could have in the competition. In fact, they are the same rules, but in this time the teams will be able to collaborate. Also, the leaders are not the only that appears in the scanner. The name of the teams now can be seen too, making it easier to locate Pito's squad, whose name is PM4. That name means the death of her and M. However, Fuka tries to make her focus only on the game right now. With this in mind, she calms down and the long-awaited day comes to an end, and while LLEN is ready in the game, Fuka is taking time to enter, which worries her friend. In the player zone, SHINC, the gymnast team arrives to meet against Memento Mori, the guys who attacked LM in the lake. In that, M and Pio also appear, and it is then that the boss of Memento expresses his dislike of her. This is because despite being strong, she always used her partners as a shield while she enjoyed the deaths. That's why you can't trust her, because she is a total suicidal. Even her name Pitohui comes from a poisonous bird from New Guinea, which suits her perfectly. With only 2 minutes left before the game starts, everyone is worried because the pink demon is taking a long time to reach, but she finally arrives in a hurry and everyone receives her with joy. In that, Pito approaches her and greets her hoping for a good game. But of course, the protagonist knows how serious this is, promising to kill her and reminding her their promise. The game begins the countdown, and as the girls get ready, LLEN feels a bit insecure, not knowing what weapons Pito or the others will have. But after talking to Fuka, she relaxes and finally the game starts. The second squad jam begins. LLEN and Fuka appear in a city, noticing that the map has a limit now. Then they ran to hide in order to check the map, discovering all the new locations in the area. The idea is to advance, avoiding the scanner, and with that kill Pito. But for her bad luck, they see that she is the farthest target, being on the other side of the map. This is noticed by all the other teams, realizing that they separated the favorite teams on purpose. To Fuka comforts her. As soon as they see enemies, she goes to face them, but ends up falling into a trap, losing her legs. Since it will take a while to regenerate, LLEN leaves her to face the enemies, ready to show them what the SG winner is capable of. In this way, she shoots towards her enemies, taking them all down with nimble shots, without giving them the slightest chance to fight. Even so, she's in trouble when one of them pulls out a shotgun, but fortunately Fuka comes out with her grenade launcher. This act leaves all spectators fascinated. On the other hand, the machine gun lovers are taking down a group, while the Memento Mori team are watching everything from a distance, trying to be cautious. On the other hand, Pito gets bored from waiting so long in one place, but M, as he is the leader, orders them to wait, since in that way they will be able to wait for the stronger enemies and easily kill them. For example, LLEN, because he knows how powerful the pink bunny is. Meanwhile, Fuka managed to recover from her injuries thanks to the first aid kit, but now she must be aware of all the traps that are set. They both start to discuss what strategy they should carry out, and with the scanner, they observe that there is a squad near a train tracks, and to redeem herself for the mistake, Fuka suggests a plan to the protagonist to deal with them. In turn, the other favorite teams see on the scanner that they are still very far from the others, getting frustrated, having no choice but to act and move. Back with LLEN, both have reached the train tracks, putting their plan into action. Fuka starts shooting grenades in an arc. She can do this since she has been practicing a lot with a grenade launcher, becoming able to shoot from long distances without having to see the enemy. But for that, she needs her friend to tell her some approximate distance from her enemy, and using this strategy, they manage to hurt the rival team. With a few more grenades, she manages to finish the last survivor, generating excitement among the viewers. Then the scanner arrives again, and they are surprised to see that several teams are directed to where Pito is. This is because they all know about her, so they are going to exterminate her first, making a temporary truce between them. Seeing this, the other favorite teams are are surprised but also disappointed because this is a battle royale and there are no alliances between teams. Meanwhile, the protagonist runs at full speed to try to stop this, but Fuka stops her because no matter how fast she runs, she will not be able to reach it. She stops very upset because she doesn't want Pito to die because she wants to be the one who killed her. However, this one is not scared at all. On the contrary, she is excited for the opportunity to take down so many players at once. After seeing that, all the viewers know that a big battle is approaching. Meanwhile, Pito's team is attentive and waiting for the next step, but the team does not want to face those who are going after them. But the girl wants to do it, and for that, she entrusts a job to M. In this way, the teams manage to surround them in a waterfall, and since they have no other way out, they begin to shoot at it, believing that they are hiding behind the curtain of water. But it turns out that only M was there, protected with his shield and throwing grenades to distract the soldiers, giving the opportunity to his partner to attack and kill everyone with her maniacal smile. In turn, the other members of PM4 take charge together with M until only 2 of the opponents remain, to which Pito tortures until the last minute, but in the end she only throws a grenade at them to finish them off. Then she walked away, happy to have so many victims to play with. After that, Pito begins taking out the leaders of the allied groups one by one with an antimatter rifle, but to her misfortune, one of them goes offline before she manages to kill him. Seeing this, all the spectators assure that PM4 is going to win, since between her strength, her rifle, and M's shield, they have the victory assured. However, LLEN must be taken into account since she is the previous winner of SJ. Back to the protagonist, they are in the dome of the map, where there is a savanna biome, where they camouflage themselves there, since there are 3 other teams near that place. In that, shots are heard so quickly, LLEN realizes that they are not natural, and that it is a trap. For this reason, the protagonist decides to advance to look for the other teams and finish them off, but they are quickly discovered, leaving them with no choice but to attack, and since Fuka is not good at fighting up close, they decide to use the strategy plan to use against Pito. This consists of throwing pink smoke grenades in the place, so that she could be easily camouflaged and with that finish the players one by one. Despite this strategy works very well, Fuka gets exposed to a enemy, but she manages to get away and point her pistol at him. And since she is terrible at shooting even at close range, she is forced to use a weapon like a sword to win. Shortly, both meet again and realize that they have not finished with everyone, so they discover there was one who pretended to be dead and ends up showing that he is harmless. In view of this, they ask him to see the contents that he has in the bag, showing them that there are P90 chargers, for which the protagonist demands him to give them to her to be able to win the game. In exchange for the chargers, he asks her to make a deal, and this consists of kissing his cheek. It is like this that LLEN receives the chargers, and shortly after that she embarrassingly kisses him. They discover that is actually a girl, and this one asks them to meet in the real world. However, in the middle of the conversation, someone starts shooting at them, and the girl does not hesitate to protect LLEN, asking her to win with her last words. Because they spent too much time talking, the last team from the dome arrived with them, and this one is Memento Mori. LLEN and Fuka run away from the squad since it's obvious that they won't be able to beat them, so they use their friends' grenades to distract them. That's when the SHINC team arrives to save them. This is why when they meet again, Iwa asks her to face each other for a rematch, but quickly, they explain what's going on with Pito and how she can't lose until she confronts her. On the other hand, the only survivor and leader of the KKC group is running alone, remembering what Pito did to her partners by betraying and shooting at them after making a temporary truce. This left her somewhat disturbed, so she is forced to finish her off even though she doesn't like to shoot. In turn, while Pito prepares to fight seriously, LLEN is monitoring all the teams, seeing that the machine gun lovers have already been exterminated by TS, while the others are mobilizing just like her, and in turn, Eva starts the candy operation. In this way, they advance towards where the PM4 team is, which are waiting for them in the distance with snipers, but the girls knows about it, and that is why they already put together a strategy, which consists of changing direction from time to thus evade the bullets and confuse the attackers. However, M is more skillful and manages to trick one of them with a line of fire, so she lowers her guard and thus kills her with a shot. While it's bad that she died, she bought enough time for the others to position themselves, and that's how they started her plan. Sophie allows herself to be killed in order to arm the great anti-tank rifle, which only works with a pedestal since it is too heavy, and that is why they take advantage of her friend's body, managing to destroy M's defense. Even so, this and the other soldiers are not easy to defeat, so while they distract them, LLEN sets off to attack from the side along with Fuka's grenades. This is because even though they are enemies, the SAINC girls also don't want anyone to die like in SAO. It is in that moment that the last member of KKC shoots Pito with her rifle, hitting him directly in the head. Seeing this, the protagonist runs to kill this girl while M does everything to save her, but she feels more and more excited, feeling so close to death, fainting from the pain just before being left with a lower life. Given this, the protagonist and the others decide to go against them, since they consider that it is the best opportunity to defeat them. But when the Memento Mori team arrives, they go directly against PM4, taking advantage of the fact that it is weakened. These are in a cabin, where one of the soldiers asks about the relationship between M and her. Discovering that he loves her, the soldiers agree to start protecting them, giving their life to prevent enemy players from getting through, but being killed on the spot. Just when it seems that all is lost, Pito wakes up and starts killing one by one, and it is revealed that she is using a photon sword, the same one that she used when it caused problems as a newbie in Bob, thus killing all the soldiers in the cabin. It is like this that she ends up meeting the leader of the squad, but he manages to stop her attack with the sword for a while, since she ended up cornering them, and thanks to the saber that she carries, she can take out the laser from the other side, which makes her enjoy it as she sees how they are about to die. On the other hand, Len only watches the scene shocked and asks herself if she really can defeat Pito. Meanwhile, in the waiting room for those who lost, one of the SAO team girls only looks at the rest of the team and cheers them up. At that, Fuka arrives with her friend to discuss her strategy and help her calm down. And that's when the last scanner arrives, where all the teams except TS are in the same area. So everyone, except the protagonist, goes out to exterminate PM4 being waited on by its members. However, they don't understand why everyone except the pink bunny is advancing, so it doesn't take long for them to start shooting at them, gradually killing all the girls, but in reality they are sticking to the plan, shooting incessantly towards the house. And this is quickly discovered by M, who goes after Eva, shooting and killing her on the spot. On the other hand, Fuka has lost her arms and legs, finding herself with no other option but to crawl to the cabin. But since she knows she won't survive, she communicates with Len, telling her that even if she doesn't make it, she don't regret about anything, and tells her to follow her example, because if she doesn't act and just stays still like before, she won't be able to get anywhere, because while the others went to battle, she only stayed shaking. Realizing this, without thinking, she took the P-chan and headed into battle without a second thought, with the purpose to kill Pito, no matter what. It is like this that everyone notices that she has finally begun to act as she had done in the previous SJ, finally returning to being the Len that Evil wanted to face. This is observed by Pito and M, but as soon as they see that, she is just running away, so they decide to follow her using one of the cars outside, chasing her at high speed until they reach a river. But just when she finds out the edge of it, she turns and begins to run towards Thimma and finally bends down. Since she was close to the coast, they are unable to stop, so they end up falling. However, that is not enough to defeat them, so they return for revenge, but she takes the opportunity to jump and shoot them from above. Again, it has no effect, so Pito starts shooting at her, thus being able to injure her but not kill her. She stays adrift in the river, which causes her to gradually lose life. Len knows that she has no chance, so she decides to give up, but at that moment, Fuka appears with another of the cabin's cars, throwing grenades at PM4, thus managing to distract them in order to save her friend. In this way, they start a chase, where each one tries to kill the other, but unfortunately, both vehicles run out of fuel. It's for this reason that they decide to crash to put space between them. That is when Len and Pito, without thinking twice, launch into a close combat, where at first Len is at a disadvantage, but uses P-chan as a shield and manages to get closer to her rival, managing to throw her to the ground, leaving her with a desire to end her. Afterwards, she thanked her for giving such a good fight because she hadn't enjoyed something like this in a long time, but she wouldn't understand this because she was risking her life by playing the game. It is at this that the protagonist reminds her of SAO and about how it is crazy to even participate in that game. For this reason, Pito explodes in rage, kicking Len away with a punch, and because of this, she takes the chance to grab Len's gun and point it at her, placing her in a totally unfavorable position. Nevertheless, when she tried to shoot at her, the P90 exploded because of a bullet that was stuck, allowing Len the opportunity to attack with her knife, but it was not enough because she managed to catch her. And if that wasn't enough, M also caught Fuka. However, Pito kills her partner after realizing that he was a traitor who put everything that had happened until that moment. As soon as the protagonist calls her a demon king because of what she did, she starts to sing, which gives Fuka a chance to break free and go on the attack. Right before Pito catches up to her, her friend cuts off Len's arms so she can attack her opponent by biting her neck and achieve victory. Pito, as a result, believes that she's going to die, but Len tells her that she will not and that she must remember the promise they made together, getting her to calm down and finally finishing her off. But when it seemed that everything was over, the TS team arrives to finish them off, ending like this the second squad jam. Time after, Karen meets up with her friends so she can thank them for her help, and later she goes with Miyu to see Gashi, who leads them to where the person behind Pitohui is. During the journey, he tells them the story of how he met Pito. He gives them a phone in which they can see what Gashi looked like before he met Pito, showing that he was quite obese. Then he started telling the story. One day, he met his goddess, a very beautiful woman who he followed everywhere until he was eventually discovered by her. And for that reason, she took pictures of him threatening to show everyone those photographs unless he did everything she told him to do. In this way, he ended up becoming his slave, unable to have regular work or studies, but strangely, he was very happy with that. This kind of love continued until the arrival of SAO, because soon Pito looked for the death in all games, even GGO. At the end of their trip, the three arrive at a private concert of Karen and Miyu's favorite artist. Pito is supposed to be waiting for them there, and finally they end up listening to his favorite singer. After the show, Gashi takes them to the dressing room, where they meet the owner of the venue. But when Kenzaki arrives in there, the protagonist immediately discovers that she is Pito, as Gashi was very careful to arrive just before the concert and took them to the dressing room, not to mention that there was only one person who knew her address, dress, appearance, and name, and that was Kanzaki, because the Karen sent her a letter a long time ago. After this, Karen hugs her and cries because she was happy that her friend didn't die in the end, but Kanzaki quickly takes a chance to kiss her, because she was jealous of the kiss that she gave to the girl with the cartridges in the SJ. Sometime later, the two friends meet again in Jijou, talking about what happened, so Pito promises her to not to risk her life in the games again, not to mention that she is still impressed that someone could beat her. In that, someone falls into the trap they had set, and both girls go out to fight together again, and that's how this story ends.